Hi everyone, today our group will discuss Norway has potential market for Australia farm and how globalization has shaped this business environment. Norway is a small but high development economy. This is closely connected to global markets through the EEA, but at the same time it still have strong government involvement. Clearly regulation and structure legal standards. This make Norway has the stable and attractive market, but also a market that require carefully preparation. In the presentation, we will look at Norway from several perspectives includes political economy, economic, and human development. I will begin explaining how globalization has shaped Norway's policy, economic, and legal environment. Globalization has greatly influenced the political economic of Norway as it has become more open and regulated. Political economy can be defined as the interaction between policy and economic and legal systems that influence the manner in which markets are operate. Norway is a north and organized market economy and not pro free market economies. That is, the state and the institutions still have a significant roles to play and attention to the market force. Globalization have largely affected Norway by this involvement in the Imperial Economic Area or EEA. Norway has had access to EU single market since joining in 1994, and this has resulted in the free movement of goods, service, capital, and labor. Meanwhile, Norway embraced a high proportion of EU rules and standards. This implies that globalization has not resulted into more open market, but also more legal and regulation integration. Never the major point of Norwegian system is that it has been made open without getting like state driving. The government continue to have robust rules in the economy in terms of ownership of strategy firm and the regulation of the strategy area. Market outcomes are still influenced by institution and not totally left to competition. Each side up a system of market openness and government perception, which substitute each other. Globalization has bring about competition and interaction in the economic marketing. Norway, a very open and interconnected economy, farms have the advantage of expanding market and more consistent business environment through the EEA. The system is transport easy to plan and does not work in practice, which is not light touch. There are no unclear rules on what is required because the regulations are clear and they are always do it. This is of the particular significance to Australia company as entry the Norway market need to through practice and comply the legal regulation and adjust high regulate and status business environment. Norway can be grandly termed as stable and credible market be entry, but not easy compliance market. When talking about Australia farm, it would mean that the business environment is high attractive as it is clear and well development, but the business must able to cope with the regulatory demands. Firms are advised to make sure they signalize their compliance easy science in ability and adapt to legal existing requirements by the major intermediary. And this is my reference. Thank you, everyone.
Question 2 asks us to analyze Norway's economic and human developments and decide which measures matters most to Australian firm evaluating Norway for investment or expansions. Using week 3 concept, economic development refers to income, output, growth, and market performance. It is commonly measured through GDP, GNI per capita, and purchasing power parity or PPP. However, income alone gives a narrow view of development. Human development is broader. Based on the Martensen's capability approach, it considers people's health, education, freedoms, and opportunities. This is why HDI combines income, life expectancy, and education. My thesis is that Norway is highly developed on both dimensions, but HDI is the strongest single measure for Australian firms because it captures workforce capability, human capital, and long-term operating quality. Norway's economic indicator shows a wealthy and stable economy. World Bank data shows that Norway's 2024 GDP was about 484 billion US dollars, GDP per capita was about 86,785 US dollars, and GDP growth has 2.1%. Its population is around 5.6 million, so the market is wealthy but limited in scale. For an Australian firm, Norway is not a large mass consumer market. It is better understood as a premium high income market with strong purchasing power for high value goods and services. However, income measurements have limits. Statistic Norway reports that total GDP grew by 2.1%, but mainland GDP grew by only 0.6%, partially due to extraction activity. This means GDP can overstate market attractiveness if industry context is ignored. So Norway is economically highly developed, but GDP mainly shows market value and purchasing power. So it does not fully show workforce quality, education, health, or long-term business capability. Norway's human development is exceptionally strong. UNDP data shows that Norway's 2023 HDI was 0.970, ranking an equal second globally. Life expectancy was 83.3 years, expected schooling was 18.8 years, mean schooling was 13.1 years, and GNI per capita was 112,710 US dollars in 2021 PPP dollars. This links directly to sense capability approach. Development is not only about income, but whether people have the health, education, and opportunities to participate productively in society. For an Australian firm, this matters because a healthier and more educated population can support productivity, lower training needs, and strong innovation, especially in skill sectors such as technology, engineering, finance, consulting, clean energy, and advanced services. Therefore, Norway's HDI provides business relevant evidence of strong human capital and workforce capability. Each measure gives Australian firms a different insight. GDP shows overall market size and demand potential. GDP and GNI per capita shows average wealth and purchasing power. PPP improved this by adjusting income for cost of living differences. However, these measures are still mainly income-centered. HDI is stronger as a single measure because it combines income with health and education. It therefore captures the human capabilities behind Norway's economic strength. This links to international business research from Dunning, argues that multinational firms consider location-specific advantages, not just market size. Also, Nielsen ETL also showed that FDI location choice depends on multiple host country factors, not income alone. So GDP shows market scale, and GDP and GNI per capita plus PPP show purchasing power. But HDI gives the most balanced picture because it links development to workforce capability, productivity, and long-term operating quality. To answer question 2 directly, Norway is highly developed but economically and socially. Economically, it has high GDP per capita, stable growth, and strong purchasing power. However, its small population and petroleum-linked growth mean that economic indicators alone do not give the full picture. For an Australian firm considering establishments in Norway, HDI is the most important single measure. A firm is not only entering a market, it is entering a labor force, education system, health environment, and long-term operating context. HDI captures these factors better than GDP, GDP per capita, GNI per capita, or PPP alone. However, GDP should still be used carefully. Bibalva Oberliner argues that HDI can hide inequality and sustainability concern because it is an average measure. Therefore, Australian firms should still consider GDP, population scale, industry, structure, inequality, and sustainability alongside HDI. Overall, Norway is the best understood as a high-value, highly skilled market, not a large volume market. Therefore, HDI is the strongest single measure for an Australian firm evaluating Norway because it best captures the human capability behind Norway's economic strengths and gives the clearest indication of long-term business sustainability. And this is the slide that shows all of my references that follows the Monash AP A7 style. And now Matt's gonna present about the question 3.
Thanks for Amy and I'm Matt. I will introduce the cultural distance between Norway and Australia. I will mainly use Hofstad's cultural dimension and communication fields to compare the two countries. The goal is to understand how culture similarities and the difference may affect internationally businesses. First, Norway and Australia share several important cultural similarities. Both countries have low power distance, which means organizations tend to have flat structures and employees accept equal treatment. They are also highly individualistic, so people value independence and personal achievement. In addition, both cultures have open communication style, which makes interaction more direct and transportation. Their similarities help reduce communication barriers and support effective cooperation in business setting. However, there are also some key differences between the two countries. Norway tends to emphasize equality and cooperation, while Australia places more importance on competition and performance. As a result, Norway often adopts a more consensus-based approach, where Australia focuses more efficiency and resources. Those differences can lead to different management style and work player expectation. In terms of communication, both Norway and Australia are considered low contact culture. This means that communication is usually direct and explicit, while less reliance on contact or no verbal cues. This reduces misunderstanding in business interactions. However, Norway may still be slightly more conscious and consequence oriented, while Australia is generally more direct and assertive. The table summarizes the key similarities and the differences between the two countries. As we can see, both countries are similar in power distance, individualism, and communication style. However, there is a clear difference and masculinities and decision making. Norway focus more on cooperation and consensus, while Australia implements competition and faster decision making. Overall, this suggests that although the two countries are culturally similar, their management approaches can still be quite different. In conclusion, Norway and Australia have moderate cultural distance, while their similarities support effective communication. Their differences in value and decision making may still affect businesses practice. Therefore, firms need to understand and adapt to these differences when operating internationally. Now, let's move on to our next group member.
To begin, we examine two classical trade theories to understand Norway's position. Adam Smith's absolute advantage explains Norway's current dominance based on its natural endowments. However, in today's climate-constrained market, David Ricardo's comparative advantage is a more critical lens as it captures structural transformation and shifting opportunity cost. As highlighted in the Global Strategy Journal by Benito, geopolitical tensions and climate changes are drastically increasing the long-term opportunity cost of fossil fuel dependency. Therefore, while Smith explained where Norway is now, Ricardo's framework must guide where Norway is going, transitioning from static geographic efficiency to dynamic comparative positioning in a green economy. Analyzing Norway's actual exports, mineral fuels and oil still dominate, accounting for approximately 62% of total goods exports. Under Smith's theory, this is a clear absolute advantage driven by geography. However, this fossil fuels reliance faces diminishing comparative advantage due to rising transition cost and carbon pricing. In contrast, the seafood sector perfectly exemplifies the transition from natural endowments to credit assets. While geography provides the foundation, Norway has engineered a sophisticated supply chain and technological infrastructure. Similarly, in advanced machinery, Norway overcomes high labor costs by specializing in high-value, niche industrial technologies. This shift confirms that Norway's future lies in knowledge-intensive industries where opportunity costs are minimized. Ultimately, we recommend that the Norwegian government must prioritize Ricardo's theory of dynamic comparative advantage. To ensure long-term viability, Norway should aggressively move beyond its absolute advantage in low resources and invest heavily in credit assets as defined by Dunning. This involves a strategic pivot towards green technologies, particularly carbon capture and storage called CCS, and offshore renewable energy. To illustrate this shift with a real-world example, we can look at the Norwegian government's Longship project. This is a massive multi-billion-dollar national initiative designed to provide full-scale CCS as a service to European industries. By commercializing this climate technology, Norway is actively providing how a nation can pivot from extracting fossil fuels to offering high-tech decarbonization services, cementing a dynamic comparative advantage for the future. By focusing on this high-value niche, Norway can overcome its high-cost labor environment and secure a sustainable trade position. This strategy does not ignore current strengths, but rather guides the structural transformation necessary to remain competitive in a post-fossil fuel global economy. For Australian firms, Norway's transition from the Smith framework to the Ricardo's framework creates a shift from competition to collaboration. Norway is no longer just a fossil fuel competitor. It is a prime expansion market for clean energy and maritime technologies. Australian companies specializing in CCS, hydrogen production, and offshore engineering possess complementary strengths that align with Norway's strategy direction. There is significant potential for joint innovation and R&D sharing, especially in environmental standards and regulatory compliance. By positioning themselves as technological partners rather than mere resource traders, Australian firms can leverage Norway's comparative advantage shift to build long-term, high-value market presence in the Nordic region. Thank you for listening. This is my references. Thank you for listening.